You're listening to UCW Radio. In your face.
What we got here is a failure to communicate.
Oh, have I got your attention now?
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
You know what I mean?
Money to be made in a place like this.
Money never sleeps, pal.
You're crazy. Don't run when you lose. Don't whine when it hurts.
You know what it takes to sell real estate?
It takes brass.
I've fallen, and I can't get up.
All right, welcome to Money Never Sleeps. This is the show where we talk about everything and anything that impacts the flow of money globally. Now, before we get into anything tonight, over the weekend, we lost a really important figure on Wall Street. In the world of business, she was a pioneer of sorts. You know, during the mid-1960s, she was brave enough to take a leap of faith and became the first woman to ever own a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. And this was at a time when it was an all-boys club. She opened up the doors wide open and paved the way for so many women, not only on Wall Street, but in the world of business, to stake their claim and not allow anyone to tell them that they couldn't do a thing because they were women. So Mickey Siebert, was and will always remain the first woman of finance. She will be sadly missed, but her legacy will live on in the world of finance for some time to come. All right, now, if you've been watching the precious metals market, you'll notice that gold has continually drifted up over the past several weeks. Everyone has an opinion on this, and in my opinion, I really don't think gold belongs where it is right now. I mentioned this several months ago that, in my opinion, gold at some point in 2013 may well drift down into, the $1,000 range, if not lower. Granted, I'm not a gold bear, but the rise in precious metals has really nothing to do with supply and demand in the physical metal itself, but more of the increased activity in ETFs. With that said, you may see a bump as a lot of weddings going on. You have wedding season in play in India right now. So, and I say this because India, not China or the United States, India is the largest consumer of gold. And it's really interesting because when gold is acquired over there, it's rarely, if ever, sold back into the markets. So people, give gold as good luck gifts and so on and so forth, and thus creates a flurry of activity during that time, just for the short term. Anyhow, I just think that it's probably overvalued at this point. It was only about under a decade ago where you had gold at the $400 or $500 range. So big bump up that I really don't think will sustain long term. Again, I'm not a gold bear, but it's the reality of things. And something really, really interesting, and we're probably going to talk about this further during the show, but something really interesting is happening in Richmond, California. The local government is making every attempt to impose eminent domain in order for the city to seize hundreds of mortgages from banks like Wells Fargo and some other major banks. Now, these are mortgages where the homeowner is basically upside down. The value of their home is worth less than the mortgage itself. So Richmond, California, along with Detroit, Chicago, and so many different cities across the nation, they're facing the same issue of home values being, worth more, actually worth less than what the mortgage itself is worth. So now, here's the kicker. If the city of Richmond, California is successful, I promise you this, that many other states will follow suit because they would have set a precedent. And that means that banks, pension funds, private equity firms, any organization that issued a mortgage in these depressed areas will have losses on their hands in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And again, with that, in my opinion, the banks are not going to lose their investment. They're not going to lose their investment. That's not how it works. But however, they will get fair market value for their loans. This could potentially boost the housing market as many of these homes won't go into foreclosure, and it kind of stops that process over there, and it can help the cities bounce back somewhat potentially. So it can be a good thing, but the banks, I think they just need to work with the cities as opposed to battling in court, because at the end of the day, the cities may just win the government's constitutional power of eminent domain and seize those mortgages. So, it's going to be an interesting thing. Now, let's go into the business of Hollywood. If you're a film fan, a comic book fan especially, then you've heard the news that Ben Affleck, he's been chosen as the next actor to play Batman. And this is going to take place in the Batman versus Superman epic film that's to be released in 2015. Now, there has been a lot of commentary on this. So on social media, the news, and opinions and everything have been flowing all over the place. Look, the reality is everyone has an opinion, okay? And honestly, initially, I was thrown off by the choice and thought it wasn't a good one initially. But then I thought about the story, and, at the end of the day, here you're talking about, a film making money for Warner Brothers, okay, making money for the studios and creating jobs, so on and so forth. And if the franchise, actually, if this actor does good, then the franchise continues. And I thought about the story of Ben Affleck and Ben Affleck's success and going from writing a screenplay with Matt Damon when he was younger to actually getting lucky enough after a struggle to get sold. And that movie was Good Will Hunting, and got an Oscar, first time out, and then a string of successes, another awards and everything, and he developed and built up in entertainment, from acting to directing, and becoming a real force in Hollywood, which is really interesting. When you're looking at both ends of the deal, you're a director and you're a successful one, and you're an actor and you do well at that. You can see it from both ends. So basically, you enhance the project because it makes it easier for them to work with you. So him being an accomplished director, I think it'll make a world of difference. And he understands what it takes to make a movie and being an actor and so on and so forth. So I think Warner Brothers, at the end of the day, made the right choice since Christian Bale didn't want to reprise the role, but I think, financially it's going to work out for them. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the dollars and cents and how successful they can make a big-budget film. Because these big-budget films, they go, the budgets are, $200 million plus. So they have to make that somewhere. Movies like Iron Man, so on and so forth, especially Iron Man, made their money within the first 2 weeks. So this is going to be interesting. This is going to be an epic film. All right. So now it's time to find out what's going on in the world according to John. So please join me in welcoming Oreo Capital's John Diness to Money Never Sleeps. How's it going, John?
Hey, Lou. I'm glad to be on the show tonight. We've had some pretty interesting things take place in the world of private equity that I think your listeners would like to hear about.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get into it because private equity, for the benefit of our listeners, they force situations. They're able to, a lot of companies that you see out there that are big now. They got funded initially through private equity. So, that's the catalyst to bigger things. So, so good.
A couple of things we can start off with is about as we talked about last week were some of the regulatory changes that are taking place, and then also some of the trends that are taking place in private equity and technology, so that we can also kind of update the listeners as to some of the trends they may look for.
Okay.
One of the first things I thought was really interesting was last Thursday, the NASDAQ shut down for 3 hours midday, and of course the SEC hired a new member on the commission, former Republican Michael Pinwar, who was an economist by trade, is now working with the SEC to study these markets and look at market structure reforms. And he mentioned in an article that back in March, they had been looking at some regulatory systems compliance called Reg SCI, which would hold these agencies and exchanges accountable for and prevent outages and cyber attacks and other technical problems. So I think it's rather interesting, as we were talking about regulatory changes and technology, that here we experienced a major market trading platform that was down for 3 hours.
And you know what the most interesting thing about that was, John? They were down at about 12:20. They didn't come up till, it was over 3 hours. Now, and during that time frame, don't you know that they refused to give any comments about it? They refused to notify the public. They refused to notify and tell anyone what was going on. They just said that the system is down. Look, we had a situation. Just you're talking about this. Facebook, when they went public, it was a big fiasco. All right, and a lot of firms they were penalized. They had to pay back to investors millions and millions of dollars. Okay,
right.
Because money was lost and everything. I don't understand now if the NASDAQ, had this problem on their end, and it wasn't to any fault of any traders, anything else. It was whatever happened technically on their side. Now, how? There's no repercussion. There's no fault.
Right. SEC Chairman Mary Jo White said late on Thursday that she would call a meeting with the exchange officials to discuss regulatory paths going forward and press ahead with reforms. These reforms, though, she talked about, of course, would provide guidance on security and stability, and also propose necessary changes for system disruption and industry-wide type of backup systems. And I just think it's rather interesting that Mr. Pinwar, who took came on with the SEC, said the exchanges cited a number of concerns, including costly and unduly broad requirements to disseminate information to member firms. So he said these events raise fundamental and investor protection questions. And that was about the only thing that I saw that was released on Friday by Reuters.
Yeah, I personally don't think, they're going to do anything dramatic. I know that the confidence in the NASDAQ, has slipped. The New York Stock Exchange has been the whole conglomerate has been a driving force, and NASDAQ trying to keep up with the Joneses. This little glitch, just proves that you can't go all machines. The New York they have people there. They have people that can make decisions on the spot. NASDAQ, you're talking about machines. NASDAQ, they're trying to make everything electronic, and I know the CEO of the NASDAQ, when all this happened, I pictured this. Well, this is what I pictured. That's all I pictured.
Well, if you and I were to do something like this, if we had a company listed on the NASDAQ, I'm quite sure we'd be penalized financially by the NASDAQ.
Yeah, and that's the thing that kills me is that you have companies that were actually trading. You had companies that couldn't trade. You could have traded away earlier on, but then they stopped it. They went and they requested from the New York Stock Exchange for them to stop trading in NASDAQ listed securities. Okay, Class C shares. They prevented them from doing that, and throughout across the board, and they didn't want anyone to trade. Now, I don't know how that's possible, and I think that there's definitely a big disconnect there. No pun intended.
That was good, Lou.
Yeah. Well, it's a problem. It's a definite problem.
Right. I just also got an update from Private Equity International, and they talked about Regs Watch updates on changes and regulations for private equity, and a few things they also mentioned was ERISA liabilities for private equity funds, and they're also talking about a recent SEC bad actor provision for hedge funds, private equity funds, could unearth unethical backgrounds of executives and securities lawyers. And they're talking about this recent regulation for legal backgrounds of those who sell private equity securities could lead to nervousness and layoffs among hedge funds and private equity executives, according to SEC lawyers.
Well, so, why are they doing that? If I mean, this is what throws me off with that. All right, if you're a stockbroker, that's what you're doing. You're an investment advisor, and you're taking people's money in. Yeah, I understand it. You need to verify X, Y, Z, and make sure that you're regulating it properly. Now, for someone to actually go and make introductions for a private equity fund, they're not actually touching your money. They're not even doing it. They have no decision-making capability in what you do, because once, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but once you introduce someone to a fund, they're talking to the fund directly.
Right. And
so, I mean, how does that regulation help?
Right, and they're talking to CFAs who have taken that extensive 3-year exam, who are very analytical. And then they're also talking about one thing on the positive side, a new update to bring existing investment laws in India that may be beneficial to private equity firms. And I know myself, I've earlier this year experienced the horror of dealing with private equity firms in India that have little regulation and have little accountability in the United States, and it's been a problem, and it's always been a subject of not curiosity but trepidation on the part of most private equity investors. It's similar to the trepidation of investing in firms from Africa.
Right. Well, I mean, because you don't know what you're dealing with, and if there's no regulation on the other end, especially in your business, they can make a deal with someone you introduce to them, and then all of a sudden, they can get funded and never talk to you again.
Yep. Everything can unwind.
Yeah, in a heartbeat. But in business, how your ethics in business, okay, it's important. And when people, especially in private equity, when you do something like that, word gets around at some point.
Right. And then some of the trends that we're seeing in technology, of course, are enterprise software companies and also data center technology. There is an article that was recently in Forbes on Silver Lake Partners, which has also taken an interest in technology, and they've kind of specialized in technology. They've focused on that sector quite a bit, and they're seeing more trends emerge in the storage market, the storage management, cloud-based storage,
big data,
and what they
big data.
and what they call solid-state storage.
Yep. Well, big data, and that right now. You're talking. That's the future, and that's going to be the next big trend, because big data. You're talking about the storage capacity. Hewlett-Packard, they have they're creating things smaller, they're creating the servers smaller so you can actually, have more of them. And
right.
With these companies that are providing this service, like Amazon and a few other companies that are doing this, they're going to continue to be around and grow because everyone is trying to capture that big data. They're trying to find out and how to use it. Right now, you have all the information. They're trying to figure out how to use it, how to advertise to you, how to utilize that to I guess, change the world yet again.
And we worked with a firm that was raising capital for construction of data centers, and they were able to build out the data centers for about half the cost of the competitors in the marketplace, and that was back in 2010, 2011. And of course, I think back then it was a little before its time, and I think that people were throwing up a little resistance because I don't think anybody really had a handle on the whole data center storage outlook or need for that typical type of sector within technology.
Isn't it interesting? That's always the case. That's what happened when the internet first began. People didn't know what it was. They didn't know. They said it's not going to last. They did that with television. Hey, this is a fad. It's going to go away. It's the internet. No, it's a fad. It's going to go away. And cloud computing and that type of and it's just going to get deeper and deeper. And technology is getting more advanced. Well, look at Google, what they just did. I don't know if you heard the news, but this happened, I believe, last night. That they're putting in a patent for this technology. It's called paper gaze. When you look at advertising, you have the pay-per-click. But this is for that Google Glass, which they'll have advertising on there, and it is able to gauge when you're looking at the ad, and it's how your emotions are at that moment when you're looking at the ad. Very interesting stuff. But again, technology is getting more and more advanced, and that's what it comes down to.
Oh, I can recall, Lou, back in the late '90s when Sprint and Verizon were just getting into the cell phone market, and the capabilities of the cell phones were widely unknown. And I can recall talking to many institutional investors about the capacity of the cell phone. And of course, back in '98, '99, people were kind of looking at me like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. And look at it now. You have smartphones galore, and that's what it's about. Basically, when you had cell phones way back when, they were just cell phones. They were just, you make a phone call, you text, and that was about it. Okay, but now it's just going to get more and more. You have a computer in your hands, and it's just going to get more interesting because now you have companies like Samsung and Sony. They're coming out with the bigger screens. It's like you have a phone that's a tablet.
Right. And then Silver Lake mentioned they acquired a company that is in the emerging solid-state storage market, and they state that although it's a fairly new company and it's already a $2 billion market, they're forecasting that market to grow to $10 billion over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you something with private equity. Now, when a company like Silver Lake, a fund like Silver Lake, or the funds that are out there that are true private equity, when they invest in these privately held companies, now, do they have a mandate in their corporate charters that when the company goes public that they have to exit?
Lou, it all depends on how the deal is structured. Sometimes that's the predominant exit strategy. That when it goes public, they have to exit it from their fund. Of course, the private equity firm is handsomely rewarded, but in most cases that's true.
Yeah, because it was just interesting because when Facebook, went public, a lot of private equity firms had to exit, and they had all that excess money. And you have companies now that are benefiting from that because now you have all this excess money, and they're trying to find the next big thing.
Right.
The next big thing. Dealing with the cloud and data storage, that's big. But what's also big is how we're going to be living in the next 5 years.
Right.
And it's interesting. You have kids that are, just in college or they're out of college, and they're creating these apps, and they're doing it because they saw the success with Facebook and then with Tumblr and Instagram and all these projects, all these companies, and they're using it as a get-rich-quick scheme. Not scheme, but get-rich-quick deal, where they're creating it, but not with not any way of monetizing it.
Well, I like the latest new app that I saw on the news that now you can put this app on your phone where wherever you're at in the world, you can have a drone parachute you a beer. I don't know how much that beer cost, but it's probably a pretty good alternative to rather than having drones targeting U.S. citizens, having the drones target you with a beer.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. I don't know how many people would get that, but I guess if you're stuck in a jungle or in the desert and you needed a beer, there you go.
Hey, if you're at a Yankees game and you're in the stands and you're too lazy to call the guy and to give you a beer, or you don't want to pay for his beer, you can have a drone just parachute you a beer down.
Yeah, well, if you're in a Yankee Stadium in the first place, you should question that. But other than that, but it's interesting. It's interesting. But I think that times are changing, and I think that technology is going to continue to change. And I think with private equity firms, as we talked about earlier, it depends on what deal they strike. But I think a lot of times they have to exit once the companies go public, and the next deal that's going to go public is going to be Twitter, and when that happens, you're going to have a lot of money exiting that too, and it's going to be interesting times. Now
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say on Real Deals, the private equity voice of European private equity, they're talking about in Europe and the UK that the three areas of technology they're looking at are mobile, wireless, SaaS, and the cloud and IT services. Mm-hmm. So those are, and they're shifting from late stage private equity to lower and middle market private equity.
Well, they should. Because you have a lot of good companies. You have a lot of good ideas that are flowing, and you have people trying to put stuff together, and they just don't have access to the private equity that they need. And these private equity funds, if they're not restricted by the governance and their charters, for them to jump in early stage with these companies that have a product, not just an idea, because someone can have an idea, they have ideas all the time, and they look for seed money, okay? But they need to have something that's viable, that you can see. If you can see what they're doing and you can see what's happening, then you may have something there. So that's my opinion anyway.
All right. And they state that mobile technology is the largest information technology trend since the arrival of the personal computer 25 years ago.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, only a third of the planet has a cell phone. Okay.
Right.
And there was this movie. It's funny. Okay. It was with Nicolas Cage. All right. It was called Lord of War, and it's a movie about someone that supplied that ran the arms, in Africa and everything. But there was something that he said in that movie I just thought about. They were giving stats, and the stats were only X amount of was it 1 out of 20 or 30 or 40 people or something, were armed in that part of the world. And he said that's not my problem. My biggest problem is how am I going to arm the other 39 or 40 people. So it's the same. It's the same concept there as with the cell phone. You have 1/3 of the world that have mobile devices. Now the big problem is, or the issue should be, that how do you get mobile phones in the hands of everyone else? Because that changes the game.
Right, and they mentioned that company Wireless Logic is the largest independent operator of machine-to-machine communications sector, and the market is anticipated to grow more than 30% per year.
Well, that's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting times. In private equity, you're going to have a lot of companies benefiting, and it's going to be interesting. So now, let me ask you a question. Now, what do you think about the eminent domain in Richmond, California?
I think that's going to create a lot of problems. I think it's just amazing that and what are they going to benefit by doing that? I mean, I'm not sure I have a handle on where their benefit is.
Well, I think what they're trying to do, that they see a lot of people going on there and getting foreclosed on. People get foreclosed on, they have to move. That means you're moving people out of the city. Just look at Detroit. So you foreclose, people have to move. They have to go where they can afford to live. So now these houses aren't selling. So now these houses are going to foreclosure, so it's bringing on the market further, which you're going to have more houses underwater and more people just abandoning their homes, leaving their homes or losing their homes through foreclosure. And it could destroy a city. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make a deal with the banks, say, hey, we'll buy the mortgages. They're going to pay the banks fair market value.
But who's going to give state of California the money?
Private equity. Private equity.
Okay. I thought maybe it was another government bailout that was going to increase our deficit.
No. They got a guarantee from a private equity fund. I forget the name of it. But the private equity fund came in, and they guaranteed them. They said, we will buy the mortgages.
Okay. Well, I know in the past, Lou, that back in 2009, I raised for money for a residential REO fund. And after 2008, 2009, the banks got their lawyers involved, and it became very difficult to get a hold of those bank tapes and to access the inventories of the various banks that had these REO properties. Mm-hmm. And, I think that if a private equity firm is going to step in and give these guys whatever, 60 cents on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar, and bail out these communities, then I think there's definitely an opportunity for these private equity firms to make a sizable profit.
Yeah, I think, look, in my opinion, I'm looking at it, short-term and long-term. If I'm a bank and I have mortgages, let's say I have 100 mortgages in a particular city or a particular community, and these mortgages are upside down, and these people can't pay. Now I have to go pay to go through the foreclosure proceedings, take back the property, where now if I go to sell the property, I'm selling it at a loss. So I would rather have a bird in the hand than two in the bush.
Right, and earlier you mentioned that the banks aren't going to lose money, but I don't see how their balance sheets cannot reflect losses if indeed they've got a loan that's set at $250,000, and yet when they short sale it or sell it as a foreclosed deal, they're going to get $125,000 for it. So someone's got to pay that difference of that loss, and then someone is liable for some capital gains taxes because, according to the IRS, if I've got a mortgage at $250,000 and I short sale that property and get $125,000, the difference is actually profit, according to the IRS, even though it's a loss. but on my personal taxes, the IRS considers that a profit and a capital gains tax.
I mean, that's a code that they need to change, because that doesn't make any sense to me. You know, if you have to short sale something, okay, then you wind up having to pay taxes on that. That's crazy.
Right, because according to the IRS, they feel, hey, you've gotten out of the liability of $125,000 scot-free, so therefore you've gotten out of that liability, and that's a profit, and you owe us tax on that profit.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we have to go into further discussion next week on that, because that makes absolutely no sense to me. And talk about making no sense. You've been speaking about this for so long, okay? Even before Obama got reelected, and all this fun stuff happened. What's going to transpire in October? We're hitting a ceiling again. I don't understand. How do we go? We pull out and we pay back debt and do all this stuff. We're selling, all this interest in AIG and Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, and the government's taking it and they're selling off these assets and they're making a profit on it. How are we hitting a ceiling in October? That it's possible that the United States won't be able to pay its obligations.
Lou, I remember back in the Clinton administration, Newt Gingrich shut the government down for 2 weeks. And we didn't hear all the uproar that we're hearing now from the Obama administration, from the Clinton administration. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting to me how, there's this blame game going on severely from this current administration.
But if you look back, what years was Clinton in office?
Oh, it was back in the 90s.
Okay, now we're in the social media age, so no one can be quiet. That's another problem. There's no secrets. You can't be quiet. You're too connected. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right, but we didn't hear the Clinton administration come out so strongly against the Republican Party and blame the Republicans, and it's all the Republicans' fault for shutting down the government. There wasn't that negative news that hit CNN or Fox back then against the opposing party.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't understand this whole administration. I really don't. From, us, the United States constantly being, at the brink of, I'm going to call it bankruptcy, because that's pretty much what they're saying. We get our credit rating cut down, which is what it is. You have the government, as I said earlier, selling securities and making a profit. So where is all this money going? And then on top of that, you have Obamacare, where you have companies like SAP and other companies that are actually, redevising their human resources and their insurance situations to accommodate for that, because they're going to wind up losing a lot of money.
And if Obamacare was so good, then why is it that Nancy Pelosi and all of her cronies in Congress opted out of Obamacare?
Because Obamacare is going to cripple companies in the United States. It really is, and it's a big concern. And I mean, how can they? I mean, what they're going to initiate with that is going to create such a ripple in business that you can have more companies doing business outside of the U.S. than inside of the U.S. And if they, because there are rules with that too. Now you can have more part-time workers than full-time workers.
Right.
But the problem is with that, if you have someone that's even a part-time worker and they're a salaried employee, you have to give them insurance, which is a further problem.
Right. We're going to see the United States become a part-time society.
Yeah, that's not good.
And what also people don't realize, Lou, is that these extra taxes that we're going to get hit with. And of course, the average Joe doesn't realize how much it's going to impact his pocketbook. But trust me, come next year, 2014, when it's fully implemented, and the average guy making $40,000 a year or more is going to get hit with a minimum of $4,000 in additional personal taxes. And as we see this occurring, of course, my belief is that Main Street right now is not matching up with Wall Street. I look at the equity markets right now as a coffee table with 3 legs instead of 4. And of course, the weight is on the 3 legs. But my belief is that as soon as Bernanke stops with his $85 billion a month bond buying program for the Treasury Department, that interest rates are going to rise, equity markets will tumble, and that's when the average guy is going to see his 401k dip dramatically, like they did years ago when they were all complaining about how they had to get a second job at Walmart as a greeter because their 401ks were down so bad. And on top of that, when they get hit with that $4,000 additional personal tax liability, they're going to be livid.
You know, because they don't realize this because they're not being told in plain English.
No.
They're hearing the rhetoric and all the lip service that the political lip service has given to them. All right, a rosy picture is being painted, but you know what? What's the reality of it? You know, I mean, get a mathematician in there, do the numbers. I would love for a mathematician to sit there and do the numbers, say this is what's going to affect you. If you're making $50,000 a year, this is your impact, and this is what's going to happen to you.
Right. But he stood there on TV and said, if you want to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you want to keep your existing plan, you can keep your existing plan. We don't want to disturb the relationship that you have with your physician. Now all I hear is from the Democrats is that, well, it may cost a little more, but everybody's going to be really happy if they have a pre-existing condition like cancer and now they can get coverage. So go ahead and don't worry about the cost and how much extra it's going to affect your pocketbooks, but you'll be glad when you get cancer and you don't have to worry about those pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, and what I see them doing too is this is where it gets very interesting, is that they're promoting this. It's like a sales tour. They're promoting this to these college kids. These young people, between 18 and 25 or 18 and 30, they're promoting it to them and selling it, trying to sell them the package.
Right.
All right, dude, it's the best thing. You're in great health. This is perfect for you. But all it is about getting the money from them so that they can deal with people that are sickly. You know, I understand if people are sickly, you know, they need health insurance. They need medical help. So the government should actually go and step in and help. But they're taking it from everyone to go take care of everyone. It just doesn't make any sense. Like you're forcing someone to do something. You know, it's what is that? Socialism, communism? What is this?
Right, and what they're not telling the average public American is about how these additional taxes and costs are from Social Security, all these entitlement programs, Medicaid, Medicare. These are the 3 biggest things that are going up, and our deficit continues to skyrocket. And of course, now, thank God, somebody is saying, hey, let's do away with spending that $2 billion a year on Obama phones.
Mm-hmm. Well, you want to know something? It's interesting, and I was talking to someone just because I was curious, and I had to ask, because I knew that this particular person was, you know, utilizing, the public services. And I asked, I said, why? I mean, you have 2 legs, you have 2 arms, you can get up off your butt and go get a job. So, yeah, I can go do that. But guess what? I'll be making less than what they're giving me. So
right.
What incentive are they giving? You know, they used to have job programs where they would go and put people to work. Right now it's like It's a handout. The money, the checks come in every month. They go and they pay their rent. They get their food. They do whatever they have to do. And the reality is they get lazy, and they figure that they're entitled to it, and they don't go out and earn a living. You know, and that's a problem.
Fox News, Bill O'Reilly showed that surfer guy out in California who was proud of the fact that he doesn't have to work. All he has to do now is surf, and he gets a free handout. And they said 16% of America now relies on food stamps, and of course there's so much abuse in that program. People are taking those food stamps and going to strip joints and using that money to go to strip joints.
Well, how about this? They utilize that for drugs. They utilize that for a lot of things. You know, but I mean, no one talks about that stuff. You know, no, that's a no-no. You know, granted, you have people that actually really do need it. People that really do need it. Okay, and those people should get it. But I say it again: if you're 30, 40 years old, 20 years old, you got 2 legs, 2 arms, you can go work, get a job. Get a job. You know, whatever you need to do to take care of your family. You know, that's the way it should be. And again, you know, this whole situation, it trickles down to even another problem. Okay, college. All right, I saw that the numbers today, the stats on it, that I think, what was it, in 2005, I think, what was it, I think between the ages of 40 and 50, that the college tuition debt in 2005, I think it was like $2 billion or something like that. And now, you know, today, it's like 15 or 30 or some crazy number. And if you're 60, they had this for someone that was 60, the age group of 60, that it went from $8 billion in 2005 to $80 billion. Which, I mean, for college, okay, this is the debt that's accumulated.
They've said, Lou, now that college debt has outpaced the debt for mortgages or for other programs, and that college debt now makes up the largest portion of U.S. debt.
Yeah, that I have a problem with, because you have kids that have this vision, because it's not like it was a long time ago. They had this vision. All right, I'm going to go to school, have the college experience, then I'm going to get a job because I went to college, and that is not true. I mean, you can go to college and have that whole experience, but I think even the universities are actually filling up the schedule with things that are not essential. You know, they're saying that, hey, it's an experience. Sure, it's an experience, but guess what? You're going to go pay, you're going to be in debt for like $300,000 for an experience. That's great. How are you going to pay that back when that $300,000 turns out to be $1.5 million by the time you're 40?
Right, and they also said on the news that the more that the government extends those student loans, the more the colleges accelerate the cost.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then they keep adding on and adding on and adding on, and I think it's a sad situation. You know, granted, I mean, should these young people have the opportunity to get an education? For sure. Actually, better than that, for damn sure. They should. They need to be educated. But there are different ways of doing it. Have online programs. Make it cheaper for them. I mean, do something, you know. And it just amazes me how you have to go in debt, and there's no guarantee when you come out that you're going to have a job. There's no guarantee.
No, and I think part of that, Lou, lies in the universities. I recall in my undergrad degree, it was from the Harvard of Aviation. No one said to me or any other student at that university that when you get out, it could take you anywhere from 5 to 15 years before you start making a reasonable salary and get close to even $100,000 a year after spending $100,000 back in the 70s for your education.
Yeah, and just imagine if you didn't pay that back, what that $100,000 would be today.
Yeah. So a lot of these universities, they don't really tell the students the full story. It's kind of like our current administration who gets up there and tries to sell all of these different programs.
Well, at least when you get a mortgage, they tell you what you're going to wind up paying at the end of 30 years.
Right.
That doesn't happen with the university or college. They don't tell you that, hey, you're going to take out this loan or you're going to get this grant, whatever the case, you're going to take out this loan, and this is what's going to happen, over this amount of time. And I think if they pay it early, I think there's a penalty for that too.
Right. And they don't talk to the students, about what type of competition is going to be out there in the marketplace when you do get out, and who are you going to be competing against? Are you competing against the guys from Wharton, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, who have these prestigious degrees, and they're all fighting for the same $40,000 a year job or $60,000 a year job? And of course, a lot of these kids coming out, I've talked to some kids who come out and expect to make $100,000 a year their first year.
Yeah. Yep. They have delusions of grandeur, and that's the fault of whoever's guiding them while they're in school. Okay, and you can't paint the picture that, hey, you get out, you're going to get this type of job. You have people graduating MIT, the highest in their class, that are not getting jobs.
Right.
It's the way life is, Yeah, but honestly, you have more tech positions than any positions out there. They're like Wall Street way back when. You know what? You had an opportunity to actually go and build a career. Now, very difficult. Very difficult.
Right. But I think also, Lou, there's a difference in the work ethic of that younger individual graduating. I think there's also an entitlement issue that is kind of like the entitlement issue of what Romney said. 47% of Americans depend on the U.S. government for a handout, and I know even my own daughter, 18 years old, has that type of entitlement attitude, and it's disturbing because I always brought her up to work hard and told her, if you want to succeed, you have to work hard. But the kids today, they've got a different outlook.
Well, that's because they're being this picture's being painted to them. Okay, they're not creating this image in their head themselves.
No.
All right, you have so many things. Even discipline as kids are growing up. Discipline. You have to be able to. When you have a child, you got to raise them the right way, and you can go raise them the right way. Doesn't matter if they're going out there and they're hearing things from other people and they're seeing what the government. If they see that the government is doing this, hey, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be like this. It's okay to be dependent. It's okay to believe the system because they're saying it's okay. So it must be okay. These are our leaders, so it must be okay, right?
Well, and they see in the news the guy surfing all day long and getting paid food stamps and not have to work, and they think, hey, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and that's sad, because there's more to life than having a handout. But you know what? We hopefully things will change with that. I think that hopefully you'll get a lot of hungry graduates that come out and are able to actually do something and create jobs. But the reality is, with this Obamacare and everything they're doing, that's hitting the ceiling. How can even a company like Google or Apple, how can they go and create jobs here if they're going to get slapped when they're doing it? You create a job, you give someone a job, then what do? Like with the housing, and this is the thing with the housing, we take more houses off the market, that means more building can happen, which you create things. People have to build, those are jobs. Then, more people are owning houses, they're not being foreclosed on. Guess what? People are mowing your lawn, they're painting your home, They're fixing the pipes, fixing the wiring, and all this stuff's happening. You're creating jobs, via housing. So there are a lot of different things that need to get done. But if you start taking those jobs off the table, the initial jobs where you can have homeowners and have people, actually working and contributing to the economy, it's going to blow up in our faces.
Well, as I said, I think I mentioned it last week, Lou. The trend that I also see taking place is, as I mentioned, that more and more of these small business owners who are going to be acquired by the private equity firms because they're going to get fed up with the taxation, the heavy taxation and health care and corporate taxes, personal taxes, and they're going to take that golden parachute and get bought out, and you're going to see deal flow increase across multiple sectors because of this administration. So I think that the silver lining in this gray cloud is that private equity will benefit and will increase, and we'll see more and more of that deal flow as next year comes into place.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that deal flow because private equity could sustain things a lot longer than a private company on its own. And I was talking to someone about this today. I just hope, even though if Obamacare goes into full effect next year, I just hope that the next administration that comes in, does something about that. But Congress can actually step in and do something, because I feel that this is going to cripple the job creation rate. It's going to have to cripple it because, who's going to want to go and hire more people? So you go hire more people, your expenses are even higher than before. So how could you afford it?
All right, and then on top of that, you've got some of these states lobbying for $15 an hour wages.
Yeah. Seattle, they're looking for $15 minimum wage, and that is insane.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So what we're going to see, Lou, is I think Obama's already talking about extending it from October till next year sometime. He's hand selecting the portions of the law that he enacted and trying to get an extension. And I believe it'll be extended maybe into late 2014, but come 2016. I think that you'll see it repealed because there's already petitions going around to have it repealed, and I think that's going to be the predominant issue on the campaign trail in 2016.
No, I think that's going to be the case, and again, I think for the immediate future, we're going to have some issues going into next year. And as far as companies creating more jobs here, I think if they were given the incentive to do so, that they would even bring the manufacturing here, the car companies that bring the manufacturing back. And wouldn't it be nice to have Apple manufacture here? Wouldn't it be nice for all this stuff to happen in the United States? But it's not, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime. So I think that's pretty much what we're dealing with, John.
Well, let's talk again next week, Lou.
Yeah, definitely. So now, before we go, why don't you give the listeners information on how to find out more about what you do and you get your input, because you have your blog, you write a lot of things about private equity, and I'm sure that our listeners would want to know a little bit more about it.
Well, I've just posted a new article on my blog about growth equity versus venture capital, and they can look at it at www.reocapitallllc.com, and then click on our blog page, and then also on our news page, I've also posted that REO Capital is speaking out on Money Never Sleeps with Lou.
Excellent. Yeah, and then also we're going to have a Money Never Sleeps magazine. That's a digital magazine that's going to be coming out, and you're going to have special articles in there where people can read. So we're going to let everyone know when that happens. But I do, thank you, John, for coming on the show again. And we're touching on a lot of topics that are actually going to be helping a lot of people, I believe. So we'll do it again next Monday, 7 o'clock. And I'm sure we're going to have a whole host of more other topics that we're going to touch on because every day something new is happening. But John,
right, maybe the NASDAQ will go down again, Lou.
Oh my God, yeah. we don't need that issue, But until then, I hope everyone has a great trading week, and just be informed. Do your research, do your homework, and read articles, read whatever you can read to educate yourself. And we'll be back with you next Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, right here on Money Never Sleeps.
You're listening to UCW Radio. In your face.
What we got here is a failure to communicate.
Oh, have I got your attention now?
Please, for lack of a better word, is good.
You know what I mean?
Money to be made in a place like this.
Money never sleeps, pal.
You're crazy. Don't run when you lose. Don't whine when it hurts.
You know what it takes to sell real estate?
It takes brass balls.